Okay, this is Antonio Avery from Detroit, Michigan.
That's a cool name.
He says, I'm a first-time writer, and my question is twofold. What is the importance of embargoes for video games? For example, I've heard you all say that I'm playing this game that I can't talk about. I'm just curious as to why. Most people who follow the gaming circuit know a lot about the games that are coming out, and to know that you guys are playing it or have copies of them would not diminish anything. So let's say we can answer the first fold first.
Yeah. So I mean, there are several reasons for it.
Mm-hmm.
One is they don't want everybody to just be giving off-the-cuff impressions as fast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to actually play through it and consider it, and not just like throw stuff out there. Also, that has another effect, which is to prevent people from rushing through reviews and trying to score something without finishing it or without spending a significant amount of time. It takes the race out of it, like the race between different reviewers. Not the race of the people.
I was looking this way. Did one of you guys make a face?
I didn't.
You made a little bit of a face.
I didn't mean to. I was thinking about something else.
Anyway, so everybody's reviews go up at once, so there's no more competition to get it up first.
Yeah.
So that's the major thing. Also, the publishers like to control when the message hits.
It creates sort of an event when a review embargo goes up.
If if you go to several game sites, if you see one preview on one site, that's easy to miss or ignore. But if every site you go to on this day has this preview of Mass Effect Andromeda up, then it's much harder for you to miss that.
I mean, it's about control. Like if they're confident that they have a really, really, truly excellent game, they'll be comfortable with that review embargo being several days before the game's launch.
Sometimes, I mean, like with Horizon, it really seemed to be more about getting out in front of the Switch, where that was going to dominate news coverage. So it's less. It's not even necessarily. And in that case, they were also very confident with it, but it's not necessarily all about how good they think the game is. It can also be, well, strategically, we think we're going to have a more powerful message if it comes out at this time.
It's sometimes spoilery. So sometimes there's,
don't talk about this plot point or this character. Or
in your video review product, try not to have anything past,
which we're usually totally. Sometimes, every once in a while, you get really dumb stuff, but then most of the times it's like, well, we don't want to spoil the ending of a game or that this character returns or whatever.
We never want to spoil anything, but like if there's something that like we feel is like really important to show our audience that hey, we have this strong criticism or praise about this game. We need to be able to show it in order to talk about it. We're still going to avoid spoiling anything, but we're going to push back on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if the ending of a game is terrible, for example, and it impacts our score of that game, well, then you're very careful in your script.
And a lot of times, sometimes we'll get comments where it'll be like, a real journalist wouldn't abide by embargoes. And they're like, oh, you're in the developer's pocket. And it's like, well, no, the fact of the matter is it's a transaction, and the transaction is they are giving us early access to a game.
They don't have to give us
and we are agreeing. They were like, thank you for the early access, and we will not talk about it until blank. Whereas
it's contingent on the access. Like if we want to do whatever we want, we can buy the we will
buy the game at launch, and everything will be late.
But then our guide like IGN's a lot more than just reviews, Dan.
Wow.
But we want to I'm always thinking about neat features we can do around Zelda, and it's important to have a big, thorough, free guide for Zelda, and all the other stuff that we do, and have informed opinions on podcasts is contingent on getting access to the game as early as we can.
And the thing is, like that's something that money cannot buy. We hear a lot about like, oh, you get free games. It's like that's not really what it's about. Like we can afford to buy our own games if we have to, but you cannot buy a game before it's out. And that's when it's most valuable. So that's why we work with the publishers on that.
Sometimes there's embargo shenanigans that Dan comes up against where they try to embargo a game for after, maybe the morning that it launches.
10 a.m.
when someone in Australia has been streaming it for 22 hours by then.
Right. So we actually have a hard policy against that now. We won't agree to an embargo that goes beyond the commercial availability anywhere in the English speaking world, because everybody has a button on their controller now that puts it on the internet, and we don't we would be handicapping ourselves to do that.
Button is R2.
I also see a lot of people say like, oh, this game is embargoed until the day of release. That means they're not confident. That's not true at all. Like it's by far the most common embargo date is like the release time.
Yeah. And that being said, if we don't get copies until day of release, a lot of times that can be worrisome. But then other times,
it's not a rule.
That's just a Bethesda thing now, and usually Bethesda games are pretty good.
Yeah, it's not a rule. Sometimes there are reasons for it. Sometimes things come together at the last second and they just weren't ready yet. It's not a hard and fast rule that a a day and date embargo or not even getting review copies is necessarily like a No Man's Sky situation.
Yeah, I mean, like Doom and Dishonored are two examples of pretty good games.
The second fold of Antonio Avery's question is he says, I've been playing video games since 1985 when I was 3, and that's around the last time I actually played a Zelda game. I've owned many systems since then, but the last Nintendo console I owned was the Super Nintendo.
Me too.
That being said, I'm totally all in for the Switch. I have got mine pre-ordered along with Zelda, and I was wondering if I need to have played any other Zelda games to appreciate this one.
This is going up tomorrow, right? After the Zelda embargo. Speaking of embargoes. Oh man, Zelda.
Yeah,
The short answer though is no.
No, you don't need to play.
Yeah,
And,
that's
and like all of the Zelda games are like that. There's no continuity really.
Well,
What about the timeline?
yeah,
It's
it's-
like-
yeah,
yeah.
Dan, you're
There is
wading
apparently-
into some
there is-
molasses here.
a thin thread that supposedly connects all the games, but I don't think even most gamers would be able to explain that to you.
And
Right,
there's
that's the hyper nerdy next level Zelda
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah,
It's actually unclear as of now. You know, people are piecing together more
Yeah,
from
we
the
have some,
spoilers.
we
and
have some
critics
theories. Yeah.
that maybe it's unclear whether they're pulling like a Logan with this game, where it's like, ooh, here's all these fun little references to the old games, but really it's its own thing.
Yeah.
Or if it is like directly, concretely connected to
Concretively.
the other games.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Like, you can totally enjoy this game just fine.
Into the concrete.
Having not played a Zelda game since the original Legend of Zelda, that being said, go play Link to the Past, you weirdo. But also at the same time, I put in like 12, 15 hours over the weekend and saw a ton of stuff that I was like, oh, that's really cool. Oh, look at that. And so, you'll get a little bit more out of it if you did.
Dive in and enjoy.
It'll be fine. Also, play as naked Link the whole time. Because that boy doesn't
Don't
have any
put on
clothes. No. But then if you go to Death Mountain, you might die. Sorry.
Well, the hard mode doesn't come till later on, so if you want to
What
play
if
on
you
hard mode now, you cannot put on any clothes.
Don't do naked Link in hard mode.